Welcome to the Authority File, the podcast where you'll hear conversations with academic librarians, technologists, researchers, and authors whose work is laying the foundation for higher education's future. I'm Bill Mickey, your host and the editorial director at Choice. In this four-part series, which is brought to you with support from AM, my guests and I will be taking a deep dive into their new open access resource, First Folios Compared. And the first folios that we're talking about here are versions of the compilation called Mr. William Shakespeare's Comedies, Histories, and Tragedies. First published in 1623, it features 36 of Shakespeare's plays, and AM has partnered with a number of institutions to either digitize for the first time or import existing digital versions onto its Cortex content management platform. It's estimated that there are just over 200 first folios still in existence, and AM has a little more than 50 of them represented in this resource. They've got a set from the Folger Shakespeare Library, Shakespeare's Globe, and the Elizabethan Club and Beinecke Rare Book and Manuscript Library, just to name a few. All of these volumes are in various stages of wear. Some are pristine, some not so much. But one of the cool things about this resource is the detailed metadata that lies underneath, which allows researchers and students to visually inspect volumes side by side, allowing for unprecedented simultaneous comparisons. Joining me to talk about First Folios are Claudine Nightingale, publisher, and Anna Attrell-Klein, product specialist, both from AM. Claudine and Anna are on hand to talk about how this project came together, the characteristics of the collection, the technology that supports it, and how the platform will continue to expand. In this third episode of our series, we peek under the hood and look at the technology and metadata that power the First Folios Compared resource, which support its unique ability to present different First Folio versions side by side. All right, so let's take a peek under the hood, look at the tech and the Cortex platform that the folios are hosted on, and Anna, we'll sort of put you in the spotlight for this part. Can you talk about the Cortex platform in a little more detail and really how it kind of supports the First Folios project?
Yeah, so I feel like I can pick out some of the best features because every part of this platform is obviously designed to display this kind of stuff.
Right.
But there are these particular features that are just truly excellent for what First Folios wanted to achieve. The first one I've covered in depth is the full text search and the ability to run HTR and then be able to crawl every single separate page of a folio and hit highlight the terms you want is fairly revolutionary in Shakespearean academia. I don't think this kind of opportunity to study the first folios has ever come up before. Other major tool that was developed just in time for this is the comparison tool. And that enables you to choose two folios and put them side by side and do deep analyses of the pages and sections of both folios. Mm-hmm. And the other one Claudine actually mentioned, our digital exhibit is really lovely, and it's styled as a visual narrative tool, and we've used it to help explain the process of digitization. So we have a bit of text on the left that describes what you're about to see, and what you see on the right is an image or a video. What's really nice is we've had a lot of praise from the contributing organizations about the digital exhibit because, like Claudine said, it's a very complex process. And they've talked about how people ask, why don't you just digitize more? Why don't you just digitize everything? And they find that question fairly frustrating at times. So having these kind of visual narrative tools really helps to clearly explain something like that is quite complex. Mm-hmm. I'd say my favorite way that the Cortex platform also supports my Folios project is the CMS side. So the content management, the building of a website on it, it's so easy because it's kind of like very intuitive building blocks you're given. And that's how you build out all of the pages, these excellent thumbnails that can lead to organizational pages, adding all these extra resources like the essays, the events, just tons of additional information we've been able to really easily put into and style on Cortex. So, I mean, I know I'm biased, but I think Cortex is perfect for supporting this project.
No problem there. So let's geek out a little bit on the metadata, which is obviously so crucial to the discovery process here. Like, how was that developed, to help draw out, the characteristics of the folios and, achieve the comparison and filtering functions you mentioned? What were some of the challenges in developing that, with what are essentially multiple copies of very similar volumes?
I don't know if Claudia would agree with me, but I feel like this was the largest challenge in the project. As a team, really drilling down and figuring out what actually makes these different, going into them, having a poke around, looking at existing metadata from organizations,
Mm-hmm.
because we really wanted to create as many useful filters as possible for researchers. So we just needed to suss out every difference we could find that would actually be helpful. So we realized pretty quickly that you have complete folios and perfect nick versus ones that are incomplete with missing pages and sections.
Yeah.
The really interesting stuff, is it annotated? Has it not been annotated? Associated names and owners were also really interesting fields for provenance and for just discoverability of the journeys of these folios. And it was in looking into these filters we realized just how different a lot of these copies actually are. So there'll be full copies that are complete, but they're annotated, or copies that have missing chunks and are scribbled in, or we have completely pristine ones, or we have names that will apply to multiple copies from different organizations. For instance, Henry Folger, obviously he's associated with the Folger copies, but he's also associated with the Buffalo and Erie County copy because he made a swap with the previous owner. And it's in finding these differences that you can then create these filters and thus create these narratives that really let individual folios shine. So it took us a while and it took a lot of collaboration, but I feel like we've done a good thing there. We've managed to really draw out everything that's quite magical about the first folios.
Yeah. So, was that an iterative process, or did you wait until you had what you thought was your complete collection of folios to then begin the process of drilling into them? So you can look at them as a whole collection, or did you kind of start creating the metadata for each folio as you acquired them, basically?
We pretty much waited until we had a good amount, I would say.
Yeah. Okay.
The total number we sort of worked on as we were going along, because we had quite a tight time frame for the project, so we were essentially adding as we went along into the publication. But we basically got a sort of critical mass, and we thought we'll look at this metadata we've gotten so far from those institutions that they spent time working on creating their different fields. So we were looking and comparing between them. We looked quite closely at what the Folger had done because they were contributing so many. They've got 23 copies that they digitized. That's a sort of sizable chunk of what was included in the site. So we use that as quite a steer. But then, like Anna says, we were looking at that information, working out how we could unify it and bring it all together, and then thinking about, like she says, which are the bits that are different, because obviously a lot of that information was just repeated, was identical across all copies. But it was trying to work out which of those differing fields that would actually be useful for searching would be useful as sort of filtering results.
Mm-hmm.
So we're focusing on basically the things that differentiate between them.
Right. So Anna, you mentioned that the comparison tool. Can you talk about that in more detail? Like, what does that really enable users to do?
Yeah, sure. So the idea is that you add 2 folios to this tool, which we have a guide for on the site, and it opens into a new tab. So you can see both side by side. You can browse by sections, and those sections are plays, acts, scenes, or you can flick through the pages. But the really great part of this tool is that both of those folios are full screen side by side, and you can get in extremely closely. Obviously, these digitized documents were digitized to a very high DPI, so the quality is amazing and is particularly great for analyzing imperfections and annotations against each other.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. And then users also have the ability to compare the AM first folios with others that you may not have yet that are hosted on other institution sites, right?
Yes, so we have a few metadata only records there, and we may have more in the future. There are obviously a lot more digitized first folios than we have. It's not always possible for an organization to join on our site, but they may still have a digitized copy and want to be involved.
Mm-hmm.
So we created these metadata fields to show off just the metadata of their folios. And then it both links to the copies on their site, and it also has manifest URLs, which can be used in the Mirador viewer, which is an external image viewing platform that uses IIIF, which is, give me a second to pronounce this properly, the International Image Interoperability Framework. I've been saying that for a long time and I still think that's it. So that's a standardized way to view and compare images from anywhere on the internet in one place. So obviously our comparison tool is only for the folios on our site, but you can copy and paste the manifest URLs, and those URLs literally manifest the document, and then compare our folios, other folios, any folios that have that URL on this Mirador viewer. And the really cool thing about this is it's not locked down onto one site, but also you can compare more than 2 photos at a time on it. So if you want to really get wild with your comparisons, you can add a few screens up there.
Oh, fantastic. Very cool. You just heard from Claudine Nightingale, publisher, and Anna Attrell-Klein, product specialist, both from AM. This series is brought to you with support from AM. Join us next week for our final episode of this series when Claudine and Anna talk about whether they'll be adding more first folios to the collection, the development of ancillary materials such as lesson plans, and how first folios compared actually advances the study of Shakespeare. As always, underwriting opportunities for the Authority File podcast are directed by Choice's advertising manager, Pam Marino, and all of our episodes are produced and edited by Choice's digital media producer, Sabrina Kofer, with support from digital media assistant, Ashley Roy. That's all for this week. Thanks for joining us.